I am just going to quickly share this link with Ben, who's, I know some of you are very kindly. Today we are going to be talking all about IBS as part of our voyage through the digestive system. We are going to be tackling IBS. I'm just letting a couple of people come on. So just in case you don't know me, my name's Claudia Lefebvre. I'm a Claudia Rose Lefebvre. So in mid changing my name, so sometimes I say my name a little bit wrong, but I'm a nutritional therapist and eating psychology coach with 18 years clinical experience. I lecture at various nutrition colleges. I'm here on YouTube every Friday morning at 11 a.m. and it is always just such a pleasure and a delight and a highlight of my week. So please ask me questions. I'm very happy to answer requests. Just let me know what topics you'd like to cover. So today we're going to be talking about IBS. Now I had a request, we've just completed a 10-day health boost and it's literally day 12 today. So hopefully everyone's still feeling the glow from it. And a couple of people were asking about IBS, so it's perfect timing. So IBS is a little bit of a blanket term. It can encapsulate so many digestive symptoms like bloating, diarrhea, constipation, just gastrointestinal discomfort, motility issues, all sorts of things. And often your doctor might say to you, I think that might be IBS, and often that's left. That's it. You're left to then go and have your peppermint teas, and there's no further investigation. And IBS is complex. There's is a blanket term. It doesn't mean much in its own right. So I can see there's still people waiting on my, okay, perfect. Ben to our rescue. Oh my gosh, what would we do without Ben? Amazing, thank you so much. So IBS, as I was saying, a little bit of a blanket term, and this is where we can absolutely delve a little bit deeper and figure out what on earth is going on. And so one of the key things, one of the most important things, the very first question that I ask my clients who come to me and say, yes, I've been told I've got IBS. I'm like, well, how is it at the weekends? And how is it when you go on holiday? And people will often go, oh gosh, it's actually better at the weekends. It's just, it's uncomfortable when I'm commuting, when I'm at work, but somehow at the weekends or when I go on holiday, it actually isn't a problem. I feel better. And when that is the case, if that is the case for you, then the gut-brain axis is so incredibly connected. And we know that being in a more relaxed state will absolutely help our digestive processes. So when we're stressed, feeling anxious, and we're eating food, then we have less blood flow to our digestive system because we're in this flight or fight situation. So stress is a major factor and something that we do need to consider, look at, and be respectful of in regards to the whole digestive system. It used to be before you'd go to your gastroenterologist for your gut issues, you'd go to your psychologist for your stress and mental health issues, but now it's, we really truly understand that the body is one totally interconnected system, and what impacts on one side impacts on the other. So a lot of serotonin production, the happy neurotransmitter, is manufactured in the gut. So happy gut, happy life is what I say. Right, so stress is number one. Another thing, gut microbiome, maybe all those colonies and trillions of gut bacteria that we talked about in the last session where I explained the villi and the microvilli are housing all these colonies, cities, towns of hopefully good bacteria. But when something called dysbiosis happens is when there's an imbalance in those good bacteria, they get elbowed out by some of the bad guys. And that can lead to symptoms, particularly bloating. So when there's an imbalance of bacteria. Maybe you've got more putrefactive bacteria, for example. They're acting on partially undigested food, particularly protein, and then you could have an imbalance. You could have maybe too many fermentative bacteria, and they're acting on partially undigested carbohydrates. So then we go back and we look at your diet and see what's going on, see how well you're chewing and digesting your food, because this imbalance in bacteria can produce different symptoms. So you could be having, for example, loud, non-smelling farts with the excessive fermentative bacteria. You could be having silent but deadly type of farts with the excessive putrefactive bacteria. Maybe we just need some extra digestive enzyme support to help with this breakdown of the different macros. Maybe you would really benefit from eating more fermented foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha, live yogurts, all the, the apple cider vinegar with the mother in it, all these amazing foods that can really support the colonies of good bacteria that are so important for digestive health. Hello, Miss Curiosity, I see you there. Right, Another thing that's really important is factoring in underlying food intolerances. Oh my goodness. So we've just completed our 10-day health boost, and we've cut out the wheat, we've cut out the dairy, and people have been saying, oh my gosh, I've lost weight, I feel better, I feel less lethargic, I feel more energized, bloating, burping, all these sorts of reflux, all these symptoms have improved. And now is the time we're reintroducing one thing at a time to understand, wow, what are the triggers? So IBS is typically can be associated with underlying wheat intolerance. So when we're eating wheat and we're not digesting it well, we're a bit intolerant to it, we can get dark circles under the eyes, we can get puffiness, we can get, people notice suddenly their watch bands are a lot looser, their rings are suddenly looser on their fingers. It's because wheat can have a very, very osmotic effect on the body. It can make us hold on to fluid. So my most dramatic lady lost 12 centimeters in 10 days from cutting out wheat. That's how much fluid the wheat was making her hold on to. So it can really show, for example, in double chins, like I said, rings, sock marks is another one. So looking for underlying food intolerances, or dairy typically can cause diarrhea, or in some people it can cause constipation. Often with IBS, people talk about an alternating constipation. They feel that they're constipated, they're not having regular bowel movements, and then it feels like it sort of builds up, and then there's a diarrhea. So this can be dairy or wheat intolerance. Now, dairy or wheat intolerance can come about after after a digestive upset, after a gastro food bug, after a course of antibiotics, we can suddenly become a little bit more intolerant. There's all sorts of reasons why we develop intolerances. Sometimes it's as simple as an over-reliance on certain foods. Maybe people are eating, I don't know, cereal for breakfast. It could be bran flakes. You think it's healthy, but if you're intolerant to wheat, then it's not. Then maybe a sandwich at lunch, pasta or pizza at dinner, and you just see it's just wheat, and gluten all day long. So those are the food intolerances. Leaky gut can also contribute to IBS. It activates the immune system, causes inflammation in the gut lining. So leaky gut, I think we talked about this the last time. So you've got your villi here, your microvilli on the top, and you've got these lovely tight junctions here. Now these tight junctions between the villi can become broken. Food particles which would normally travel through the microvilli here, be properly digested, correctly digested. What happens is they just go free fall into the bloodstream not through the correct channel. And when that happens, the immune system is activated. Who's this foreign body? What's going on? And that can heighten immune reactions. When the immune system is activated, it can trigger low-grade inflammation, and it can also, in some cases, activate mast cells. So mast cell activation syndrome, MCAS, is a major contributor for IBS. So this is people who have reactions to histamine, more likely to suffer with hay fever, migraines. They're just, flushing, redness. The problem is we have mast cells all over our bodies, so many symptoms can be associated with MCAS, but actually there's a real preponderance of mast cells in the digestive system. And Dr. Tina Pierce, who's a huge pioneer of MCAS and explaining what it is and getting the word out there. So if you want to learn more, look up Dr. Tina Pierce, P-E-E-R-S, on YouTube. She's brilliant, but she predicts that in the future, IBS will be considered an MCAS issue, which I actually don't think that's right. I think because there's so many other possibilities, but I think it is central, and a lot of people, it is certainly relevant to a lot of people. And when that's the case, we need to dampen down the histamine. So MCAS is our mast cells produce all sorts of inflammatory agents, including histamine. Histamine is one of them, but it's like a cup overflowing. When that cup is overflowing, all these symptoms go crazy. I mean, I had, a couple of my clients have talked about crawling skin. Like it feels like when they wake up in the morning, it feels almost like they're insects inside their skin. It can be really extreme and really, really nasty. And what we want to do, we do need some histamine in our bodies. It's absolutely essential for brain function, for digestive function. We just don't want this overflowing cup. So that's when we look into underlying histamine intolerance, and we perhaps go on a reduced histamine diet, etc. And I can answer questions if you'd like to. Okay, another factor, underlying gut infections. So we can have an overgrowth of parasites, fungal, bacteria. Those are the three main ones. And it can just be that a relatively harmless bacteria in small quantities can suddenly get a bit out of hand, or there can be a parasitic infection or fungal. So the key thing to remember here is the bacteria feed on our diet. Whatever we're putting into our mouths of nourishing our own bodies also nourishes these colonies of bacteria, fungal, etc. And different types of bacteria feed on different types of food. So the healthy bacteria in our guts feed on vegetable fibers. So the more vegetable fibers and live food fermented foods that you eat in your diet, the more your colonies of good bacteria are going to thrive. The pathogenic bacteria and the fungal overgrowth, etc., they feed on the sugar. And this is why sugar cravings can be so incredibly intense for some people, because it's not actually the brain saying feed me, it's the bacteria and the fungal overgrowth just desperate for the sugar. So yes, so that's really important. So looking into the infections, and this is where you can ask your GP if you could do a stool analysis. They only test very limited. If you've actually been abroad and you've come back from some beautiful far-flung destination and you haven't quite been the same since, then I really recommend going to the London Tropical School of Medicine or London Hygiene Tropical Medicine School. I can't remember the exact order of the words, but they are absolutely brilliant with the testing. And they will know exactly which strains of bacteria, fungal, parasites are in the world, and they have extensive testing. Otherwise, you can do private testing, which we talked about in the last live about Genova testing, the GI effects, where they culture and grow whatever they find. So it's really helpful, really, really helpful. So those are those are the main things that we look for. In terms of bacterial overgrowth, what can happen is sometimes we can get things called SIBO and SIFO. So SIBO, I'll just quickly explain to you. SIBO is known as small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And this is where bacteria from the large intestine, from the colon, is supposed to only stay in the colon, but sometimes it can migrate and travel into the small intestine where all these villi and microvilli are. And that can lead to quite dramatic symptoms, and it can be very difficult. People often, by the time they get diagnosed with SIBO, they have been on a bit of a journey around digestive symptoms, because it's not always the first thing we look for. And what happens is, you see, between the small intestine and the large intestine, there's a little valve like a trapdoor. It's called the ileocecal valve. And it's a one-way trapdoor for the stool the fecal matter to travel out of the small intestine into the colon. Okay, so, and what can happen is that trapdoor can sometimes get trapped open, get lodged open with fecal matter. And so then the bacteria that should only be in the colon ends up traveling into the small intestine, and that can be problematic. And like I say, there's specific diets, there's specific all sorts of things for that. And then your SIFO is small intestinal fungal overgrowth. And again, we can do all of that. So fungal overgrowth, what we want to do is we want to cut right down on the sugar. And then there are certain supplements that are so helpful. When we don't know exactly what it is, we think there might be something, but we're not entirely sure. This is where we use the DIDA, or we use the oregano oil, or the black walnut oil. All three of those are very, very good, very cleansing, clearing. You wouldn't use long term, but you would just do short, sharp bursts to clear if you didn't want to do the testing straight away. I quite often recommend doing that. Great question. Can I take Saccharomyces boulardii if histamine intolerant? So one of the clues that someone can be histamine intolerant is if they feel so much worse after eating fermented foods. So here I am saying, yes, it's a great idea to have more bacteria, good bacteria and live fermented foods. Oh yes, absolutely, great, go for it. If someone has histamine intolerance, they're going to feel a lot worse, because a lot of the time with histamine intolerance, it can be that the bacteria in your gut are producing more histamine. So if you increase the bacteria, then you increase the histamine, and then you feel worse. So there are specific probiotics that are good. I wouldn't use Saccharomyces at this point with the histamine intolerance. I would go onto health.com, HEALF.com, search for histamine, and you'll see this particular, very specialist probiotic supplement that use strains of bacteria that will not increase histamine levels. So that can be really helpful. Excellent. I've just finished a course of antibiotics. Would now be a good time to start Saccharomyces boulardii. So Saccharomyces boulardii is absolutely one of my most favorite probiotics. We all call them probiotics, but actually they are non-colonizing yeast. And they will be absolutely brilliant. In fact, you can take them while you're having antibiotics, because they will prevent antibiotic-related diarrhea. But they're non-colonizing. They're absolutely brilliant for increasing something known as secretory IgA, which is your gut immunity. So when COVID hit, I sent Saccharomyces boulardii to my parents to make sure that they were boosting their gut immunity. So really good for that, and really, really great for diarrhea. But if you've just had a course of antibiotics, I would go more broad spectrum. Try and get something like BioCult if you're not dairy intolerant, something that's got lots of different strains in it. Great question though. Thanks, I'll do that. Always helpful. Brilliant. I've just had it in the cupboard for a while, just waiting for a reason to take them. Yes, definitely. In that case, take them. Take them. I mean, and just do a little course. So for me, I've been just done a little course of OptiBac women or female probiotics, just because. Why not? And then because I've been doing the health boost, I'm thinking, oh, okay, I'll just do a little extra angle on this for me. But what you don't have to be taking probiotics all the time. The idea is probiotics are like sprinkling the seeds, and then you're flourishing. All the vegetable fibers that you're eating and the enhanced probiotic foods are just enhancing that garden, and you just sprinkle the seeds. You don't need to be sprinkling seeds every day. We need to be eating vegetables every day. So I know a lot of people, when I see them at the beginning, they're like, every day I take my acidophilus. I'm like, oh, okay, well, acidophilus is a bit basic because it's only one strain. And if you were going to continuously take probiotics, I would recommend every time you buy a different brand, a different combinations of strains. If you're going in for surgery or something where you are going to have intensive antibiotics, you could get a very strong, a very strong sachet type probiotic, like Replete by BioCare is a very good one. Let's have a quick sip. It's not cheap, but it's very, very good. It's very strong, and you take it for 7 days, and then you're done, and you've hopefully replenished all the good bacteria. Oh dear, my friend has just had an emergency operation for a twisted bowel. Should she eat a better diet? Oh yes, a twisted bowel. That does sound really, really painful. And next week we're going to be talking about the colon. And you know how in the textbooks it all just looks this lovely, like, smooth thing. It's not. The bowel is gnarly and gets twisted and kinked and all sorts of things. I mean, we'll talk in more detail next week, but I had one lady who came to me for constipation. I said, oh, when did your constipation start? And she said, during my pregnancy. And it is normal to be constipated at the beginning of the pregnancy with all the progesterone, but I was like, that's a bit unusual that it stayed and was the whole duration of the pregnancy. So I sent her to the visceral osteopath, who discovered that the pressure of the baby in the womb had actually slightly kinked, not twisted, but kinked her colon, and the osteopath was able to smooth it and massage it. So it's combinations of nutrition, but also actually visceral osteopaths are amazing. I had a client, sort of more going back to the IBS, sort of reflux IBS type symptoms, and we'd done everything I'd asked, and we hadn't got the results. I said, I think you need to go to the visceral osteopath. Maybe this isn't a nutritional issue for you. And when he went to the visceral osteopath, because he'd had aortic heart valve surgery, what had happened is that there was actually a pulling from the scar tissue on his stomach, and that was contributing to all of his digestive symptoms. It wasn't nutritional at all. Well, we improved his nutrition anyway. But it was so great to get to the underlying cause. Sometimes it's structural with the gut, sometimes it's structural. And that ileocecal valve that I talked about between the small intestine and the large intestine, again, sometimes I send my clients to the visceral osteopath. I say, please examine that trapdoor, and they can establish through palpation if that trapdoor is open, and they can close it. Amazing, isn't it? Amazing. So I am so sorry about the confusion this morning about the with giving you the wrong link and then not being able to go live. But I'm so pleased we found our way, and huge thanks to Ben. So looking forward to seeing you next Friday, and I hope you have a lovely bank holiday weekend. Take care, everyone. Bye.